welcome to the Good Life Show International. This is Beverly Fells Jones, and I am an internationally known author, speaker, authority on memory, seminar leader, and practitioner for the Silva Method and the Prime Directive. What is the Good Life Show International? Well, it's not about the rich and famous. It is about the ordinary and the extraordinary people that I get to meet and interview, and they are living their dream. I will work to present a variety of topics dealing with everyday living and leisure activities through interviewing people who are knowledgeable in the subject presented. Join me each episode so that you may find the catalyst to bring your dreams into reality. You can do that best by clicking on the subscribe button below and hitting that little bell so that you will be notified each time I have a new, interesting person for you to see and hear. So please subscribe and don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you really like the episode. So please subscribe because you really don't want to miss any of the episodes coming in the future. Well, people, let me tell you, today I have the honor of having Dawn Haynes on the show. She is your Toolbox Diva, and she's an author, speaker, and trainer in the areas of violence prevention and personal development. And this month is very special to have her on the show because this month is dedicated to the prevention of violence against women. She's the author of the A to Z Guide to Student Safety and Nuts and Bolts of Unwrapping Your Gifts, and that one's due out this year, 2018. And she's also a co-author of The Secret Millionaire with James Malinchak, and it's called Reach Your Greatness. She has also been featured as a columnist in Small Business Today and Premier Agent magazine. Dawn is a sexual assault survivor, and she embarked upon an inner healing journey to rebuild the wreckage that her life had gotten her into. She had experienced low self-esteem, and she was dealing with that self-sabotage. And but she realized that she needed to build the life of her dreams. And so she is a full-on construction project. Thus, we get the Your Toolbox Diva because she's got a bunch of tools in her certified life coaching toolbox, right? That will help you make changes. She is a transformation prayer facilitator, and we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called FAST, F-A-S-T, defense, and she's an instructor for that. She brings with her, when she goes out to speak, an entertaining and interactive keynote. She does seminars and training programs for small, mid-size, and large businesses. She works with professional groups, clubs, organizations, colleges, young adults. You know, her message truly is for everyone. Whether you're young, you're old, you're male, or you're female, that's Dawn. So help me. Well, you can't really stand up, but you could if you wherever you are. But let's have a nice long conversation with Dawn Hello, Haynes. Everyone. Yes, and welcome back to the Good Life. You know, I just told you about my fabulous guest that I'm having today, and that is Ms. Dawn Haynes. And, you know, she and I met at a really awesome event. In fact, we've got the same coach. So that works really great because we get to know each other a little bit better than just meeting at an event and having a conversation. Of course, you know, I get to meet and know people in these interviews anyway. So Dawn, just go with the flow because sometimes I have some weird questions.
Sure.
All right. So I've done I did your bio before we came on air and let people know exactly what you're doing. But what I'd like you to do is to tell us a little bit about your company. So what's the name of your company?
Okay, so the name of my company is Champion Under Construction, and we are dedicated to building tomorrow's champions today. And what I do primarily is violence prevention, sexual assault prevention, and personal development training.
Okay.
Work with corporations and schools, colleges and universities, nonprofit organizations, networking groups, just a whole host of entities, and anybody that wants to further empower their group and equip them, I work with.
All right. Well, good. Now, I get real nosy because so is my audience, of course. So you are a survivor.
Yes, ma'am.
From a sexual assault.
Yes.
And the question that comes to mind for me is you don't use the word victim.
No, ma'am.
And tell me why you don't use the word victim.
It's a mindset. It's a mindset. When you view yourself as a victim, you basically view yourself as someone that things happen to. Mm-hmm. And it's an energetic thing. You know, once you start wearing that label, you kind of start to attract more and more things to you that make you feel victimized, not necessarily other assaults or anything like that, but even people, into your life that might have a tendency to take advantage of you, or situations where you feel taken advantage of. And it's all, in essence, victimized. And so, yeah, I don't use that word. That's not something that I want to draw to me.
And I like your terminology when you say energy, because just in words, the sound of the word, the vibration of the word also gives a feeling to people. And if you say, I am a survivor, just that in itself is really uplifting. Yes. And it says, nothing can stop me.
Yes.
Nothing can stop me. But if I go, yeah, I was a victim of, it is down. I was just doing an article on the vibration that you have when it is positive. It's a higher level of vibration, and yes, you feel good. But when you have that victimization thing, that vibration is low. It's associated with being sad or hurt or mean, hate. All those kinds of things is in that low vibration.
And powerless.
And powerless, absolutely. So I love the way that you do this and you talk about that. So when you're talking to people or you're going to an event and you're having this conversation, what is your, I want to say, main point of emphasis? Let's say you're talking to a room full of high school girls.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you talk to them about? What do you share with them? What do you want to share with my audience if they've got teenage girls out there, or they're in situations that they think they can't get out of?
When I share in my violence prevention talks, whether it's a keynote or whether it's a workshop, I actually kind of run the whole gamut, mm-hmm, because a lot of it has to do with personal development. A lot of it has to do with actually acquiring the skills to be able to navigate a potentially violent situation, but they're transferable skills. There's this, I think it's the Dalai Lama that said, what you do anywhere is what you do everywhere, or how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes. I don't know if it was just him, because I've been using that statement for years and years.
Yeah. But what happens is, a lot of times people think that, and I talk about this in my book, but a lot of times people think that the personal safety piece, that whole thing operates in a vacuum. and it doesn't. And so you have people who believe, you know, even though they allow people to take advantage of them, they have the disease to please, and so they find themselves doing things that they don't want to do. They won't stand up for themselves in low-level situations, that they somehow think that if I were in a potentially violent encounter, that I would do something different. And it doesn't generally work that way. Typically, how you respond in lower level type situations, whether it's someone made a comment to you that you found offensive, whether it's somebody asking you to do something that you don't want to do, typically how you respond in those types of, or someone upsets you and you freeze, or someone upsets you and you fly off the handle. Typically how you respond in those types of situations are a direct reflection of how you would respond in a potentially violent encounter. And so one of the things that I do is I start the conversation with the equipping of the tools to be able to help you successfully navigate your everyday life, whether it's anger management, whether it's understanding what actually constitutes abuse, because when we think of abuse, a lot of times we almost narrow it to physical abuse, but it extends into so many different areas. It could be verbal abuse, it could be emotional abuse, it could be psychological abuse. If you're with an intimate partner or a spouse, it could be financial abuse. There's a whole range of things that fall under the definition of abuse. And so we look at all of the different areas that constitute abuse. We talk about bullying, and a lot of times I find that people will start crying because they realize in that moment, now that we're talking about what it really looks like and the effect that it has on people, that they've been guilty of bullying behavior, and without even knowing it, because there are so many things that constitute abuse and that constitute bullying and those types of things that are normalized in our society. We talk about boundaries. A lot of people don't realize, that they don't even have a concept of what it means to have effective boundaries. And a lot of that could be, past conditioning. One of my personal challenges for a long time with establishing effective boundaries was my faith walk, and I had this misconception, and it's one that's still perpetuated even today, that, if you call yourself a Christian, Jesus says you're supposed to turn the other cheek, and Jesus says you're supposed to turn the other cheek, but that doesn't mean that I'm supposed to lay down, be a doormat, and let you run roughshod all over me. And I struggled with that for a long time, and actually read a book called Toxic Faith that changed my life even before, and it kind of got me on that road to establishing boundaries.
Okay.
And being okay with it.
You talked about not really realizing that you're in a situation of bullying or of being abused. Can you give me an example of something that, let's say, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, verbal abuse, you talked about mental abuse. Do you have any examples you can give?
So an example of mental abuse or psychological abuse would be a person who, doesn't get their way, and they don't necessarily yell and scream at you or, get physically violent with you, but they just ice you out. I get the cold shoulder, I'm not going to talk to you. And you can feel that energy that you're being iced out. And
you mean like the fine, that response of, okay, that's all right, I'll do it myself.
No, I wish it were that. That's okay.
That's easy.
You want to do it yourself. Because to me, if I tell you in an instance like that I don't want to do something, and you're like, fine, I'll do it myself, then the boundary that I set is working.
Okay.
But if I say, fine, I'll do it myself, and then I don't talk to you for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
you know, or every time you look at me, if there were daggers in your eyes, I would be dead on the floor, you know, those kinds of things. An example in a marital situation would be withholding sex. You know, just icing you out, and it's one of those things that energy is palpable. So you know when it's happening because you feel horrible.
Right. Well, the other example I wanna give is someone who knows there are some hot buttons that you have, some things that really upset you, or that you feel bad about yourself, and they constantly throw it in your face, or they're constantly saying things to put you down.
Yes.
Or never acknowledging any of your wins, never acknowledging when you do something great. Now, ask me how I know this, because that was in my second marriage.
Yep.
I had those kinds of things going on with me.
Yes.
Right? And that's a small example of, and I called it verbal and mental abuse.
Absolutely.
In that situation. And, you know, as I said, that's just a small example, but that I came to realize and women need to understand this. If you're not strong, if I wasn't as strong as I was,
yes,
and I was getting validation outside of the house,
yes,
then I could have wound up like a lot of women who stay in a situation and they say, I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I can't do anything right, because mentally they've been beat down so badly.
That's right.
But they're not getting anything outside the house, and people wonder why they don't leave.
Right.
But that's because mentally they don't have the strength, and they don't believe they're capable.
That's right. And one of the to your point about the verbal abuse, and I love the analogy that you use. In my book, I talk about the fact that physical abuse, I liken it to a sledgehammer. You know, you take a sledgehammer to a rock and hit it, and you can see the damage that it caused. You can see the shards that are broken off, or is it broke the rock entirely? You can see that. And so with physical abuse, you can't really deny the fact that you gave me this black eye, and I can't deny the fact that I'm walking around with a black eye. There's physical evidence that there is abuse going on.
Right.
Whereas I liken verbal abuse to water on a rock. It just wears it away, right, bit by bit, or bit by bit by bit. And over a period of time, an indentation forms in that rock, you know, but it's so subtle and so slow, you know, that you don't even see it until the damage is really done. Or if you have I know there are a lot of people that are interested in geology, you know, and you have one of those little rock picks, you know, and you take a rock pick to a rock, it could be the first several hundred times, you know, that you're tapping on that rock, trying to break off a piece. You don't see any evidence that there's damage occurring, but there are all these little fractures that are occurring inside of it, to the point where when you hit it that one last time to break it, now you see the evidence. But there was a ton of internal damage that had to occur before that. And so that's the analogy that I actually use for verbal abuse.
Absolutely, because, you know, and I looked at a number of things, and the woman that experiences that, a lot of times are also being physically abused.
Right.
And the key on that one is, in the beginning of the relationship, the person is great. And I have to change that, because men are physically abused too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So either one, the partner is wonderful. You think they are the best thing since sliced bread. They treat you wonderfully.
Yes.
And then one day they get angry and pop you.
Right.
Right. And then it's like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just didn't, it did, but you just made me do it. I'm sorry.
Right.
And they come with flowers or bake a cake or do whatever.
Right.
And then you go, oh, this is, they just didn't really mean it.
Right.
6 months later, pop.
Right.
But that is also slow. It's almost like it's deliberate. Now, sometimes, and you clarify this for me, is that person that's doing the abusing, it's not, what I want to call it, not super deliberate, but it's in their nature, and they wind up treating you this way. I mean, clarify that for me if I'm wrong on that, because sometimes it's just up here the way they feel, and I might think of it as they have low self-esteem within themselves.
Absolutely. They absolutely do. I think that I don't agree that it's in their nature.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times that's a result of nurture.
Okay.
I think that, at some point they've been exposed to it. I think that in the same way that we can choose to survive an abusive situation, they can choose to not be abusers.
Okay.
And in the same way that we get caught up in that cycle, because I've been in intimate partner abusive relationships as well. And it's the same thing when someone, is verbally abusing you or psychologically abusing you, and there's no physical abuse. It's the exact same cycle. They say this really horrible thing that they know is demeaning, and then all of a sudden later it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Flowers, candy, I love you, blah, blah, blah. I call it candy slap.
Okay.
That's my name for the phenomenon, candy slap, And then here's some candy.
Here's some flowers. Let me take you out to dinner.
Right. And rinse, repeat.
Yes.
But to your point, I think that I totally agree that people who are abusers have very low self-esteem. And in the same way that we find ourselves challenged with walking away from that situation or immediately disengaging from that situation, I think there's an underlying sense of powerlessness in there, and the fact that we really want to believe that they mean what they say.
Honestly, yes.
We really want to believe that it's not going to happen again. But at the same time, I think that abusers abuse and rapists rape because of an underlying sense of powerlessness. It just manifests differently depending on which side of the equation you're on.
That's their way of showing their power, because they're exerting it over someone who is has less strength than them, and that strength can be mental or physical.
Correct.
So they have that their thing. It's like in this environment we're in today, gaslighting, and that term of it's your fault, or what I did, or no, I didn't do that. I don't know where you think I did that. And
that's the best. That's the best. Now I'm crazy.
Yeah, because the one I think about, and I think it was a Tom Cruise movie or whatever, but his wife caught him in bed with somebody else, and the wife came in the room, and I think it was Tom Cruise. And he's talking about, what are you talking about? In the meantime, the woman is getting up out of the bed, putting on her clothes, going to the bathroom. She's coming out of the bathroom, going out the door. And Tom Cruise the whole time is telling his wife, I don't know what you're talking about. Who? Right? And eventually the woman is out of the door and out of the house. And Tom says, I don't know what you're talking about. I was just laying here taking a nap. What are you seeing? Do we need to take you to the doctor? Right? That's an extreme form of gaslighting.
Yes.
And the term gaslighting came from a movie. I love movies from the 1940s, but it was called Gaslight.
Oh, wow.
And what it was is back when lights were gas So they turned the gas up, and the wife the lights would start dimming. They'd go down and she'd say, "What's going on?" And they'd go almost off. And then they'd come back up and she'd call her husband and he'd go, "What are you talking about?" She says, "The lights went down." Or some music would start playing. And he said, "I don't hear anything. I don't know what you're talking about." Well, he was trying to drive her crazy so he could put her in an asylum or whatever so that he could get the money. So that's where the term gaslighting came from.
Okay.
That particular movie, it was called Gaslight, and you might be able to find it on Netflix or online or something, but it is a perfect example, and a lot of people have referred to it to what's going on now. It's like, or the projection stuff. They project on you what they're doing or what they plan to do.
Yes.
All of that is forms of abuse, and so you've got a huge topic, because there's all kinds of ways that people abuse each other.
That's right.
And I like the fact that you say, as you talk, people go, "I've been an abuser because I did this."
That's right.
I was I bullied when I said this. That's awesome, because it opens up a whole realm of conversation.
Yes.
And in different areas, not only in school, but in adults, as you said, the workplace. I mean, you can talk in a whole number of places. It's comes back to sexual harassment. Some people go, "Well, we were just teasing." No, sweetie, that was inappropriate.
Yes.
But I guess the way things have been, people have to get what the definition of bullying is, harassment is, assault, whether it's verbal, physical, sexual. They need clarification,
right,
of what that is. And so your book, A to Z Guide to Student Safety, does that hit upon that kind of stuff? Tell me about that book, A to Z Guide to Student Safety.
Okay, so it does actually hit upon all of those things. And the way that the reason for the title is because I wrote it to be a reference book and a workbook.
Okay.
So if you have, for example, when I talk about anger, and there's an overview of what that looks like, and as you're reading it and kind of going through that, if you think maybe you might have an anger management problem, then the workbook part of it I call the power tools.
Okay.
So you go to the power tools and you actually can go through a whole checklist of things like that. If in the instance of boundaries, it talks about boundaries, kind of what they look like, but maybe you're not sure if you're one of those people who I call them people with busted boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
People have poor boundaries and boundary busters.
Yeah.
And so when you go to the power tools, you have actually questions. It's like worksheets that you go through, and it's a list of different questions that you can ask. Actually, it starts out as a survey. So, when I'm in this type of situation, do I usually agree to the thing I don't want to do? Or am I the person that, strong arms people till I get my way? Am I the person that people feel like they have to walk around on eggshells around? Am I the person who, and you just go through all of those different things. And then once you go through the checklist, based on your score, you're either a boundary builder or you're a boundary buster.
Okay.
If you're a boundary builder, then there's work for you to do so that you can, a person with busted boundaries, then there's work for you to do so that you can learn how to establish more effective boundaries. If you're a boundary buster, there's work for you to do so that you start to have better awareness of that behavior. Mm-hmm. Because again, a lot of times when it comes to things like that, bullying, abuse, harassment, and even people who are boundary busters, they're not even necessarily aware of the behavior. And so the format of the book is basically so that you gain awareness of you know, what a thing is, what it looks like, and then if there are opportunities, you know, for you to be able to grow in certain areas, then there are power tools that support you in that. And sexual assault, for example, or sexual assault is a much broader term than rape, although in some states, how can I explain? In some states, sexual assault includes, like, rape is called sexual assault. Yeah. And it may or may not include other things that fall short of rape. So so in that regard, it kind of depends on where you are. So we talk about the different definitions of that. In the book, it talks about, you know, if you find yourself having been raped, these are the things that you need to do. When I talk about that piece, talk about all the different things that it's not. Doesn't matter how you were dressed, doesn't matter if you were wilding out, you know, there's never, you know, as far as the person that perpetuates the rape, there's never a point in time where you get to say, well, it just went too far. So that's not acceptable. It talks about the fact that even if you consented at some point, at any point in time, you can withdraw consent. Yep. So it covers all those different things. But then in the power tools section, it talks about, you know, things that you might need to do immediately following a rape, like don't take a shower, or call the authorities, call a trusted friend. And then, but there's another section in there that talks about if you are a friend or a loved one of someone who's been raped, then it gives you a bunch of strategies that you can use in order to support them.
Wonderful.
And so it's A to Z, because I have all these different topics, you know, in between, that basically the end result is better safety. Okay. And I am going to write a book of that nature for just everyday people. Okay. And also for the real estate profession, because I spent almost 10 years in the real estate profession. So
I've heard of issues.
Yes.
Especially with open houses and
correct
kind of stuff. People have been attacked in that situation. Now, you've got another book. Is it coming out, or?
It's coming out. It's written, but it's not as far along as this book. Okay. And so what I want to do is get this one actually published, and then that one will go into pre-production. Okay, so A to Z Guide to Student Safety is about to be published, is what you're telling me. Okay. All right. Well, I'd be glad. Will it be on Amazon when it's done? Yes. All right. So we'll still, you know, just don't change the title. Well, no, I'm just saying, because as the audience look at it and they go to look for it, they're going to look for it. And I'm going to tell you guys, just look for Don Haynes. Just search for that on Amazon when it's time, you know, because sometimes we're subject to change the title of the book. I've changed the title of my books like several times before they finally got published. Oh, funny. Yeah, so it's like, okay, you want this, you want that. In fact, when I was doing my second book, it was the designer of the cover that says, let's talk about this title, you know, and we wound up changing the title while we were doing the cover. Yeah, oh, wow. Yeah, it was just awesome. So we'll just look for your name for doing that. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to say. One more thing I wanted to say about the book. Now I got to remember what it was. One of the reasons for the title, which is why it won't change, is because it's basically written in such a way that you don't have to read the book from cover to cover. Fantastic. You can look at the table of contents and say, oh, I'm interested in this today, and just flip to that and explore that. And if there's power tools, you know, explore that. So it's not, you know, I hope people read it from cover to cover, because there are a lot of things in there I feel like people haven't necessarily thought about. Right. So I hope, you know, that's my desire. But if you choose not to, there's still a lot of value that you can get from just picking and choosing the areas that you want to explore. And one of the things that I do have in there is the opportunity for you to set personal safety goals.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Now, curiosity, what is a fast defense instructor?
Okay, so FAST is actually, it's an acronym for fear, adrenal, stress training.
Okay.
But and the name of the organization is Fast Defense. So fear, adrenal, stress training focuses on how you respond under duress.
Okay.
Under duress. And so it's a self-defense technology. I really hate that word, but when I was telling people that I taught personal safety or personal protection, the question that kept coming up was, so you teach people how to use a gun. So
yeah.
Everybody knows what self-defense looks like. So
right.
I said, hey, we're just going to have to go with that.
Yes.
But it's actually a self-defense technology. And then the other part of the FAST is because we train you and you acquire those skills very quickly.
Okay.
So where you might have some organizations that do multiple day seminars where you're spending anywhere from 3 to 4 hours a day over multiple days, or, you know, multiple hours, 10-day hours over multiple days. Our seminars are generally about 4 hours,
okay.
about half a day.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because anything that's difficult to learn that anybody couldn't learn, we don't teach it. Anything that's difficult for you to retain, we don't teach it.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we do is we actually do simulations. So once you go through all the skills, we have simulations with padded assailants, you know,
okay.
that so you actually get to feel what it feels like to be adrenalized and to have to fight yourself out of that situation.
Yeah. Very good. And it's a good thing to know. I went to a kickboxing gym, mm-hmm. and it was like an hour and a half, but right. It was like a self-defense kind of thing. And I learned how to use my elbow and my right. knee and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's a good thing to know, because it was like, I didn't know that. So yes. It's a good class to take. Now, where are you located?
I'm based out of Houston, but I travel. So, you know, if someone wanted to bring me into actually any place on the planet, I have passport, we'll
yes,
travel.
Yes, we all have passports, we'll travel. We would love to do that. And you're
yes.
absolutely right. And I think that your, what you do is needed. Now, dealing with what's in the news, do you do anything about dealing with an active shooter kind of thing now? Have you added that to your repertoire, or it's mainly one-to-one type things?
I haven't done active shooter. I've actually been a participant in an active shooter training, mm-hmm. and there is tremendous value in that. I have not, it is something that I would like to be able to teach people how to do. Mm-hmm. I have not explored what would be required in order for me to become a certified instructor in that.
Okay.
But for people, you know, in the Houston area, and I think the gentleman even travels throughout the state of Texas, if there were someone who was interested in active shooter training, mm-hmm. I have someone that I can refer for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just the idea that it's still a form of self-defense, and being able to handle that. It's so I've worked part-time for Nebraska Furniture Mart, and we've got to take all the safety training, and it was a video course mm-hmm. on what to do if there's an active shooter.
Right.
Just some basic things to do.
Right.
When that happens.
Right.
And yeah, today unfortunately we need that. I mean, you know, you're in the store and you never know what's going to happen. So you
right.
Or you never know if you're in a restaurant what's going to happen. So
right.
being prepared.
And that's another one of the things that I talk about in the book is, you know, no matter where you go, you need to assess your environment. You don't necessarily, I mean, you don't walk into it expecting something to happen,
Right.
you know, but you need to assess your environment so that if something were to happen, you know what your options are, and they, you know, in terms of being able to duck or cover, you know where the exits are, you know those things before you sit down and get comfortable. But I got to tell you this, something interesting about the active shooter training that I took. So I did active shooter training, and then probably about, I don't even think it was a month later, might have been a month later, we had a shooting in our building. In the building that I was with the company I was working with at the time. And as you know, as it turned out, people were working, and we heard the gunshots. It's a nine-story building.
Okay.
And we heard the gunshots, and then a couple of ladies who were outside of the office, because it was something that happened on a lower floor,
Okay.
came running into, the suites crying because they had just witnessed the shooting. And so those of us who had the active shooter training, immediately went into that mode of, okay, you start corralling people into offices with closed doors and making sure that everybody's safe, and making sure that there aren't people running around, and making sure that if a shooter is actually combing through the building, that they don't have access to your office or suite and things like that. And so I really felt in that moment, I felt really, really empowered, even though I was afraid.
Yes.
I felt really empowered because I knew what to do. And we had on that particular, because a lot of people had not taken the training, and so you have people walking around like, oh, what to do. It was maddening.
It's interesting that people run toward the danger instead of running away.
Yes. Or they freeze. And so we had people that literally were frozen in place because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. And we had my departmental VP at the time, and another director basically, spearheaded walking around and making sure that everyone on our floor was safe. And they literally were having to scream at people, get in my office, because they were frozen.
Yeah. And that's the advantage of having trainings and drills.
Yes.
Because now it's not, what do I do? It's like, okay, automatic, because now it's that muscle memory, your subconscious is in place and just takes off and does it. Well, that's an interesting thing. Now, tell me what you love to do to relax.
I love yoga.
Okay.
I love yoga. I love meditation. One of my favorite things to do when I'm seeking clarity and not necessarily getting it in my meditation practice is actually two things I really like to do. I like to go on silent retreats.
Okay.
And typically,
is there one in Houston, in the Houston area, or
a couple? And one of them is really, really cool. It's called the Ruah Center. It's out via Villa de Mattel. And it's, I don't know, like maybe 3 miles from my house. Okay. And so I like to go over there, and I'll do, silent retreats. They actually do day retreats. They'll do.
I was going to ask, do they do like 2 or 3 day retreats? Because
you can stay as long as you want.
Okay, because the leader at the Center for Spiritual Living, he's done 10-day, 15, 20-day silent retreats. I don't think if I could last that long, but if I could start out with 1 to 3 days, I'd probably be able to do that. But if I come to Houston, it has to be probably 3 days for the drive.
When you get a chance, Google Ruah Center, R-U-A-H, Ruah Center.
R-U-A-H. Let me type this
Ruah Center. And it'll show you like the different retreat formats they have. Okay. And one of the things that they do, and this would be a good way for you, a good transition into it for someone who's never done that before, is to do one of their centering prayer weekends. So the
Okay.
centering prayer weekend is typically 36 hours. So you go on Friday evening, you check out on Sunday morning, but you can stay as long as you want.
Okay.
But the nice thing about the centering prayer weekends is, in addition to the fact that you're in silence when you're on the campus, they have centering prayer sessions, which is basically, to me, is just a Christian word for meditation.
Right.
And so you'll have a centering prayer session, with a group. It's a group centering prayer session.
Okay.
On Friday evening, and then you have one first things early Saturday morning lunch. I want to say you have 3 on Saturday.
Okay.
I want to say you have 3 on Saturday, and then 1 on Friday. And I can't remember if you have 1 on Sunday or not, because I usually go, even though it's 36 hours, I usually stay for several days.
Okay.
Because once you go, you can stay as long as you want, but the centering prayer weekend part of it, is going to be for 36 hours. After that, you're on your own. But it's a fabulous facility. I used to always say that the only thing that didn't make that place perfect for me was that it didn't have a labyrinth. Well, someone donated a labyrinth.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
because I love to do labyrinth walks. So about 2 years ago, someone donated a labyrinth. So it has everything I need.
Everything, absolutely. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, I don't know if you know that, but I teach the Silva Ultramind, and when I teach that, it's a centering exercise, and by the end, it's a 2-dayer, and it's also centering as well as getting you acclimated to being able to manifest what you want. Whenever I teach that class, I have to be very careful of what I say over the next several weeks, because everything shows up. It's awesome. But yeah, I would love to be able to, and you're using the term centering. I say, yeah, I know exactly what that means. Taking you into that space. It's just that I'd have to see what their meditation actually did. But awesome. I always learn something when I do these interviews.
Nice.
All right. So you've been active in your community in a lot of different organizations. And I don't want to ask which one's your favorite, but of the ones that you're active, who are you truly just majorly active with right now?
Star of Hope missions.
Okay, and tell me about them.
So the Star of Hope missions is actually, they service homeless people and people who are in transition.
Okay.
They used to have 3 different locations. I think they've consolidated 2 of them onto one single campus, but the men's facility is still separate.
Okay.
But they had an emergency shelter where you're homeless and you can actually go, whether it's you or your family, you can go and you can stay there for up to 30 days. And then they have the Transitional Living Center, which is the piece that I've been the most active with. I've been involved with them since 2004.
Okay.
And doing a couple of things. Started out over there doing inner healing prayer. So I'm an inner healing, transformation prayer facilitator.
Okay.
And so started out doing inner healing prayer, transformation prayer sessions. Did that for about 4 years, and then incorporated my violence prevention training and also personal development training, but mostly the violence prevention, because the thing that I discovered in doing the inner healing prayer work was that, I got to backtrack before I tell you why. The Transitional Living Center is it's for women and families. So the only time a man can be at the Transitional Living Center is if he's with his wife or his, or a spousal equivalent, or with his children.
Okay.
They don't have any single men at the Transitional Living Facility.
Okay.
But the Transitional Living Facility, as well as the men's facility, they both have 90-day residential treatment programs for substance abuse.
Okay.
And so the majority of people that we were seeing in the transformation prayer were survivors of whether it was domestic violence or sexual assault or childhood sexual abuse or any combination of those. Over 90%. Actually, I would say over 95%, because in the 4 years before I started doing the violence prevention training, we have seen several hundred, had been facilitating with several hundred people. And out of all of the people that we were ministering to, only 2 did not disclose any kind of history of sexual violence. Okay. And 1 maybe, and I just think that it was because they didn't disclose it. Sometimes I'm not comfortable disclosing, and sometimes I pushed it so far back in my memory that I truly don't remember it. Mm-hmm. But what occurred to me, and also being able to relate that to my own sense of disempowerment and my own cycle of self-sabotage and self-destruction that were born out of those things for me. Mm-hmm. When I started getting involved in, teaching, I found it as a wonderful, wonderful way to take my power back. And so I said, I'm going to start doing this because I know it helped me to get my power back. Uh-huh. And so in 2008, I started doing the violence prevention training as a part of, it's actually incorporated into their program now. I go out 5 times a year and do that training for them.
Okay. So tell me, if somebody wanted to get involved in a nonprofit or an organization, and they do the things that we do, right? So, I'm about changing people's minds and their mindset, and so are you, different topic areas. What would they do to approach an organization and say, I want to help? I want to be there. So what did you do to approach the organization and say, I want to be a help to you?
Okay. Now that's because, I got to reach back 14 years into my memory.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what happened. I know what happened. So I'll tell you what most people can do, and then I'll tell you what happened for me. Okay. Most people, all you have to do is go on the website. They are looking for volunteers all the time.
Okay.
A lot of times they'll put specifically what areas they're looking for volunteers, okay. But what that does for you is also let you know who the point of contact is. Mm-hmm. So that even if, your area that you want to share is not listed, you know who you need to get in contact with in order to propose what it is that you want to bring.
Want to help. Yeah.
So what happened, and then networking, because that's what happened with me. I actually went to this networking event that had nothing to do with nonprofits. I want to say probably the publisher of the magazine that I'd been writing for at the time suggested that I go to this networking event or send out an invite. So I went to this networking event and I met a lady who worked there.
Okay.
And so just in talking, I don't even know how we ended up on the subject of spirituality, because you have to remember when I first went in, I went in as a transformation prayer facilitator.
Right.
But when I started sharing with her what it was that I did, she goes, oh, and I mentioned that I wanted to serve that organization because I'd had a dream about that years before I was involved in transformation prayer. Didn't even know what transformation prayer was. Years before I was involved in any of that, I had a dream that I was serving with that organization. I saw the building.
Wow.
Probably 10 years before that.
Okay.
And so when she and I were talking, she did explain to me, she told me about their spiritual life director, and for what it was that I wanted to do, she was the person that I would need to go through. Okay. And so I reached out to her. And then as it turned out, at the same time that I was reaching out to her, the executive director of the organization that I'm still involved, but not actively involved with right now, Serenity Retreat for Inner Healing and Spiritual Renewal, is where I learned transformation prayer, facilitated, have been a trainer also. Okay. And so at the same time that she and I were getting connected, the executive director at Serenity Retreat was in communication with the executive director of Star of Hope. And so it just, the timing
just was perfect.
It was perfect. And it just fell right into place. So when she came to us and said, we have an opportunity to minister at the Star of Hope. Who wants to go? I already knew that was my opportunity because I was already working, working on that with someone else. And so, but with the personal development, like I said, I do primarily violence prevention there. I take them through the self-defense seminar so that they can kick and beat up on stuff and yell and scream and take their power back, give them the opportunity to, say all those things that they never got to say.
Yes.
It's really impactful. So that actually, in that particular organization, goes through the director of programs.
Okay.
And depending on what it is you want to bring, and it was a 4-year journey. Like once I actually realized that was what I wanted to do, actually about a year in, once I realized that was what I wanted to do, it took 3 years before he would let me teach my first seminar. Okay. And the reason for that, so this is something that anybody that's interested in doing something that could have the kind of impact of the work that we do. Right. The reason for that is because nonprofit organizations are so accustomed to people floating in and floating out, and they're not dependable. And then just, and especially when you're dealing with people in transition and recovery, one of the things that's crucial for them is stability. And
yes. Right.
And so if you are somebody that's not going to be able to demonstrate that, they may or may not want to work with you. Now, what that looks like, as long as you set the expectation in the beginning, then it's fine. Like for me, I go 5 times a year. They know we usually set my calendar in December, and they know on these days to expect me. If something comes up, I'm usually able to let them know at least 2 or 3 weeks in advance, and then we schedule an alternate date.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, but I've been doing that for
that's the important part is setting expectations.
Yes.
Setting an appropriate schedule.
Yes.
Because and that way they know when you're coming, they know what you're going to do, and you show up, and then everything works. But if you, like you said, if you just float in and you never schedule, this is the day I'm going to come, and this, I'm going to do this on a regular basis. Even if you say, okay, I'm coming, I'm going to help you in your soup kitchen, or I'm going to help you in your clothing place, or whatever you got once a month, you know, and this is the day I'll be there, the 3rd Wednesday of the month. Right. And if you show up every month, then they know.
Right.
They deal with it. Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And that particular population is so fragile. They've got to have people that are dependable, especially again, when you're doing the kind of work that we do, they come to depend on it. And so he was fiercely protective of his people. And until he could see that I was, consistent, he wouldn't give me the time of day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took 3 years, but now I've been doing it for 10.
Yes. So that's the wonderful part, is being committed to things and not stretching yourself out over a whole bunch. Commit to 1 or 2, and go from there. Right. Well, this has been fantastic. So the question that I'm going to ask, and then we're going to close up, is you're invited to a dinner party, but you get to pick the guests for the dinner party. What 3 guests would you have there, and they could be living or dead, that you would have the opportunity to sit down and have a 10-course meal or a 9-course meal, and just sit and talk and pick brains?
Wow. How come I knew you were going to ask me that question
and you weren't ready? Yeah.
I was not ready, but let me
well, I tell you, I say 3, but if there's 2 or there's 1 person you just want to pick their brain, who would it be?
Oprah for sure.
Okay.
And one of the reasons for that is because, of this, the survival story, and just, there's so many things that I would love to be able to ask her.
Okay.
Who else? Who else? Who else? Who else? Who else?
First one that comes to your mind.
My pastor keeps coming to my mind.
Okay. All right.
Joel Osteen. I would love to sit down with him and Victoria and pick their brains.
Okay.
And then I'm really trying to think of, because I'm always really fascinated with people who overcome tremendous adversity.
Okay. So what's the first ones that come to your head? Okay. Because so many times we try to filter, no, man, that's it. So.
Okay. So Jack Canfield comes to mind.
Okay.
John Ascraft comes to mind.
Okay.
And I think I would like to sit down. Ooh, Maya Angelou for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having a moment because I know that there's somebody that whenever I see this person and hear their name also, and I think I would like to sit down. Actually, I think it'd be interesting to sit down with Martin and Malcolm both at the same time too.
Okay. All right.
To get those different perspectives.
Yes. So lots of different things. Yeah. See, whenever you get asked the question, and the thing is to take the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Do not filter it. Do not say, well, maybe, well, that's not appropriate. No. The first thing that comes to mind, unless it's something that's inappropriate, but the first thing that hits your mind, it's like when I'm teaching the classes about, making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the first thing that comes to mind and write it down, because that's usually the right answer.
Yes. I find that a lot when I ignore that and I do the filtering and all the things. When I ignore that and I filter and I do all that other stuff, I always end up right back with the first thing that comes to mind.
Yes.
Always. I do.
Absolutely. Well, Dawn, I really appreciate this time. We've been talking for an hour, and I just love it. Now, Dawn's website that I want you to go to is championunderconstruction.com, right? And tell them why they should go to your website.
Because my website, well, one, you get to learn a little bit more about Champion Under Construction, and I am a self-professed champion under construction. I'm still on the grow, and I still have so many things I want to do. I still have so many things I want to learn. I still have so much personal evolution that I want to be able to do. And so that's why it's Champion Under Construction, because I'm a champion under construction. I was honestly experiencing a disconnect with that, when you're affirming being great and being, and so this is how I reconcile that, because that I can do. Also, just let you know what we can do. I'm, putting up resources that you can, that you'll be able to access. I actually have a free gift right now, but I need to put the other piece up, because without the other piece, which is the part that was published in Reach Your Greatness,
okay,
the gift almost doesn't make sense. And I didn't realize that till I just went, from eyes that weren't mine.
All right. So I am going to encourage you to get that other piece up in the next week or so.
I will.
And so that when everybody comes, guys, I always take a little bit of time in editing these things. So we'll give her time to update that.
Okay.
and have it ready. But go to, and I'm going to put it here so they can see it, championunderconstruction.com, and get your free gift, your 2 pieces of your free gift. Well, again, thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. In fact, So when I come down to Houston, I'll holler at you, because that's going to be one of my camping places. I'll be taking my trailer down there hopefully this summer.
Ooh,
There's 1,000 Trails campground just north of Houston and Conroe.
right.
And so I'll let you know when I'm on my way there, or just let me know when you're speaking or something so I can come support you.
Okay. Also, I wanted to let you know, my book is in pre-publication right now, and so
Okay.
I'm going to have an offer on my website. It retails for $19.95,
Okay.
but I am going to have an offer on my website where if you go in and order it during the pre-publication period, they will order it for $10 plus shipping.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna get that. See, you're gonna make me get this edited and out really quick. Anyhow, so well, thank you for listening today. I had to kind of cut things off a little bit there, but you didn't miss anything. Dawn is really a great person. Please go to her website. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, The Good Life Show International, and be sure to hit the bell button so that you'll be notified each time there's a new video available for your viewing pleasure.